In 1956, Amherst County opened a new segregated high school for African American students. The school was built in the northern end of the county off of Route 60 West, but it was used as a high school for both ends of the county. The two older black high schools, the Madison Heights Negro School, also known as Madison Heights Colony Road, and the Amherst Training School remained open as elementaries, but sent their upper grade students to the new high school. In addition to building the new school, the county offered a 12th grade year of education at Central High School.
Well, 11th grade, that's when you usually graduate. But with our class, because it was going into a new school, we wasn't in the old school. They built Central. So they took the 11th grade and went into the 12th. So we really didn't have a 11th grade. Our class didn't.
We were going to a new school that had things that we didn't have. We were going to a school that had a gym, that had an auditorium, that had a cafeteria. Those things that we'd heard about, but didn't hurt us because we didn't have them, but we were looking forward.
Leaving Amherst training and going to Central High School was really different, but I enjoyed it.
After I finished at 7th grade, then our next step was 8th to 12th grade, which was to be at Central High School, the high school that had been built and opened in 1956. I had been there for my sister's graduation as well as other family members. So the school, was good old Central High School. And because we went to Madison Heights, going to Central High School was going to high school because it matched up with Madison Heights, because we had, running water and bathrooms and things like that. The thing that made Central different, it was high school. And you were going there, and that's when you got to meet the other end of the county. Because living in the southern end, our life was at Madison Heights. So when we went to Central, this is when we met up with students who had gone to Amherst Training School, as well as students who went to Monroe and other small schools in that area. So it was like a coming together. And so it was like the North versus the South.
They were kids that we didn't know from the other end of the county. And sometimes we had conflicts. Yeah, sometimes we had conflicts among them, but all in all, it was good.
You said that you were the smartest kids in the county. Now tell me about it, because I could see that you all thought that. So tell us about it.
Not the smartest as much as, okay, we're going over here now. We live in this county, and you got people coming from Madison Heights. They don't really belong down here.
That's right.
They don't really belong down here. This is in our end of the county. So we, and most of these teachers, our principal went with us, so, that's our person too, So it was...
Yeah.
How do you think the kids from Madison Heights felt about that?
They felt
They
were okay. They were okay because they didn't know, they had some of them joined in with us, and we knew some of them. Some of them became our very good friends, really.
Well, see, some of them I already knew. Even though they came from another town, another school, I knew them from meeting them at churches and different functions and being teenagers going out to different places for entertainment. I met up with some of the kids before we even went to school.
Coming from Madison Heights, we thought we were number one. We were the catch me out. We were the top of the mark. And here we had to leave our neighborhood and go all the way up to Central High School, because at one time we were hoping that they would build a high school down here in the southern end as well. So we would have to, call it, riding the bus. We called it like busing.
One thing I didn't like about it was the ride on the bus. We had a long ride. I thought I'd never get there. And but I adjusted to it quite well.
There was no bypass and there was no 4-lane highway. It was the old 29 that we would go up and go through the town of Amherst. I always remember turning that corner to get to Route 60 to go down to, Central High School. So every day we passed Amherst High School. And in the early beginnings, we didn't pay that much attention to it. Often when the buses passed on the highway, we would get jeered at, or sometimes they would, throw something at our bus or things like that. And coming from Madison Heights, we were trying to figure out, why was this, going on? Because we weren't going to your school, we were going to the Central High School out on 60.
I never did get adjusted, really.
How was it different?
Because when I was at Moss Rock, I was just with the family. When I went to Central High, I met people from Madison Heights, all over Amherst County. See, I hadn't been used to being in a crowd of people. But I did pretty good. I did pretty good to come out of a small school.
It was kind of scary at first. Our first day up to see all those kids from everywhere, it was really different. I had a lot of adjusting to do.
What did Central High School look like to you?
It looked like a castle. I'm telling you, when I saw the school, it was just huge, and then the inside of it, it looked just big and bright compared to what I had come from. It really was. It was really something.
Just like in another world. Like you say, cafeteria, just everything. Big rooms and just to be around new stuff like that. And so many children, when you go from a small type area. And we just loved it to death.
The facilities had improved tremendously. And it was a beautiful school.
Some of the same teachers, unless they retired or left, the ones that went over there, Mr. Anderson, who was the principal, he went. Mr. Rose, who taught geometry at Amherst Training, but was going to be the agricultural teacher over at Central. He was going over. Mr. Robinson, who did English, he was going over. Mrs. Cash. Frances Cash. She taught home ec over at the training school, and then she went over to Central High also. Maurice Moore, who taught chemistry over at Amherst Training, he went over to Central High. And then you had Miss Culpepper. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had people from Madison Heights who came down and then went over. So it was the idea of meeting new teachers and the anxiety. Which of these teachers are we going to have? What is this we're going to teach? How many students are we going to have? And, all of that anxiety. But I said we went over with the anticipation of meeting people and, how's this going to work? And what are you going to do in the gym? And what are you going to play? All those things went, but it was wonderful.
Once we all came together as one, it was our high school. And the teachers made it our high school because they instilled in us that we were going to be somebody. And that's what made us great.
A typical day at Central High School was walking the halls from one classroom to the other. And different teachers, getting adjusted to the teachers.
I guess some of the interesting things was you had your locker. Central at that time was one long hall. And then behind the long hall was the library and the cafeteria.
High school, we did have a cafeteria, but we still took our lunch a lot of times because sometimes we just didn't have the money to buy it.
One thing I did, I made friends with the cooks in the kitchen, and we would volunteer to wash the dishes and help in the kitchen. By doing that, I had a chance to sample, to eat all the food I wanted to, and I'd serve on the line. And Mrs. Rose, I never will forget her. She would cook and she would say, "Taste that, Lee, and see how it tastes." I said, "Well, I gotta have a little more of it to really see how."
Yeah, I loved high school. Again, you had the basics, the reading, the writing, the arithmetic, the history, and the civics. But we also then became exposed to courses that we had never, ever had before. art, which I loved.
They had an art room. And that's where because we had tables, that was where my class was, in the art room. Pitzenberger was a white teacher, and we fell in love with each other, you know, and he would teach art one period.
In high school, I was in the photography class, and I learned how to take pictures, develop pictures, all the way
It
through.
was a beautiful area where Central was placed, built. The classroom certainly was larger. We did have a science lab. We had and then, ironically, they only built two, one for chemistry, if I can remember, and then one for the biology.
Physical education, because there was no need to have physical education in Madison Heights because there was nothing to physical ed with, okay? We had business, which was typing and shorthand and bookkeeping, which we had never had before. We had foreign language, French and Latin.
I was slow on my French, and one day she showed up at the house, and she just sat down and talked with my parents. Said, "This is what you need to do for him to bring it up. If they saw something in you, they made sure that you cultivated that, and made sure that my parents was aware of that." But her visit to the house, she didn't have to come but one time. I really started. I got serious about my French, and I passed it.
We had shop where kids could learn how to build things, which we did not have before. We had agricultural, home economics.
I took home economics under Miss Cash, and I enjoyed that. Yes, I did.
I had home ec. I loved that teacher. I got a little special pen at graduation. I still have it. The best homemaker. Still got that pen, shaped like a heart.
I remember May Day. We used to have May Day, and I made an apron in home economics, and I got an A on that. See, we had to show it at the May Day, and I got an A on it. I was so excited. I think I still have it somewhere.
The girls took home ec and the boys took shop, interestingly enough. Never thought about it that way. But yeah, they were segregated from that particular perspective. In gym, you had girls took gym separately from the boys.
And we had driving education. So that was an elective, you know. They would come and pick you up and you would, you know.
Do you remember who taught driver's ed?
I can't remember that.
Were they white or black
teachers?
teachers?
Yes, he was white.
So most likely was sharing with Amherst County High School
Probably,
program.
Yeah. Because it would be three of us would go at the same time.
So to me, going from Madison Heights to Central just opened up a whole new world. And I wanted to be involved in everything.
Central High had Mr. Langholm. He was the math teacher. I had Mrs. Jackson. She was science. I had Mrs. Sherrill. Mrs. Sherrill. She was history and English. And all of them was good teachers. Good teachers. They really were. They made sure that you learned.
Maurice Moore. Mr. Moore was just extremely cool. Maurice Moore was extremely cool. You would be mesmerized when he would tell you any kind of stories because he was just a Renaissance man. I don't know, Maurice must have gone to college when he was 14 or 15 or something like that because he got out of school early and was going to college. He knew some German, he did this, he did that. So it was just great being around him. But like I said, he was so cool and I was so young, you just kind of looked at him. You didn't have conversations with him. And I remember he would haul a bunch of us home after science meetings. I think they were like on Tuesday or Wednesdays after school. He had a Oldsmobile 442. And I remember there must have been 12 of us in the back seat of that thing when he was dropping us all home, going home.
Well, Maurice is back out of service, and he taught physics. And there was a Daniel Webster Davis who taught math, and because I was in biology. And the kids wanted to learn. They were very competitive with each other. And we would tutor them after school and sponsor science. We go competitive in preparing them for science fairs, which they did well in.
Miss Jackson, you loved her. You didn't mess with her. You loved her, but you were scared to do anything wrong in her class.
I liked Miss Jackson, and I still love Miss Jackson. Miss Jackson was tough. It's like, okay, you need to do this and you need to do it now. And some students need that. Mr. Moore, I loved. He was concerned about the student, wanted us to expand our knowledge. Mr. Davis was my math teacher. Daniel, I think his name was Daniel Davis. He was my math teacher. I love math. I still love math. Mrs. Davis was my English teacher. She taught us how to write essays, and it was really interesting because back during those days we were going, why do we need to write essays? When I got to college, that was what English was all about, writing essays.
I was very, very good at literature because we had to learn a lot and recite a lot in literature. And I remember parts of Shakespeare, and I can rehearse it, I can say it today. I remember parts of Hamlet's speech. I can say those parts today. And they just purely stuck with me.
What's your favorite?
Shakespeare. She should have died hereafter. There will be a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in its petty pace from day to day.
I went, Miss Jackson, in science. If you want to keep a snake from biting you, get you a little switch. And just whoop that snake all the way up his body, just like it's done, not real hard, just whoop. And that snake would get just as weak as don't know what. I learned that in Miss Jackson's class. So by being in the apple orchard, there was brown moccasin snakes. And I went and got me a switch and whooped him. And I got me a croaker sack, well, a brown sack, built me a box, put that box in and carried that snake to school. I got on the bus, nobody knew what I had. I carried him on to Miss Jackson's room, and about 2 days later, we had never put him in alcohol yet. We hadn't killed him or nothing. But anyway, Miss Jackson called on the intercom, said, Robert Perry, come to the Miss Jackson class. So I went to the class. He said, Rob said, don't tell nobody, but I can't find your snake. And we looked for that snake, and we looked for that snake, and we couldn't find it. The next morning, she called me to her class, and the blackboard, that's where that snake was laying in. It was about that long, a moccasin. He was laying across the blackboard. And that's when we put him to sleep, put him in alcohol.
Maurice Moore, he was a mentor. Maurice really got my attention. One incident I really remember, I was skipping chemistry class, and I was sitting down in the gym talking to my school sweetheart, and Maurice missed me out of the class, and he left the class, come to the gym, and when he opened the door, I looked up and our eyes caught, and he didn't have to say no more. I got up and told my sweetheart, I'll see you later. Didn't want Mr. Moore to embarrass me, so I went on with Mr. Moore. And he had real large hands. And he placed his hand on top of my head, and then he was talking to me just like a father with a son, going up the hall. He told me, he said, you can go in life and you won't find a short professional basketball player, a short professional basketball player, but in life you'll find some short chemists. I took him for what he said, and I went to chemistry, and I was one of the best chemistry students that he had.
That's wonderful.
He was a mentor, and he you know, he didn't jump on me. He just told me, and it went in. I never skipped his class again.
He became a principal, and he taught science first. He never really taught me, but he was so concerned about all the rest of the kids, you know. And everybody had respect for Maurice. Maurice.
Mr. Mark was sending everybody to detention hall. Mr. Davis would give you extra math work to do. Mr. Langhorne, I forgot what he did now. I know he's sitting there somewhere. And you didn't do the rest of them like that.
You wanted to be the best you could, and the teachers would take more time with you. If you had a problem and couldn't catch on, the teachers would take you one-on-one while the other kids were doing something else, and she would explain to you, show you how to do it, let you do it, and we learned hands-on.
The dedication of the teachers, that's what I was concerned with. We had very dedicated teachers and parents. Because then, you know, we had a PTA meeting, we had the classroom full of parents. They were concerned. Unlike today where, you know, you have a PTA meeting, we get one or two parents, or back then we had all the parents. So I got to know all the parents. For me, I wanted to know all the parents. I would call all the parents. I made myself to visit the parents. So I knew it was more like a family thing rather than teacher-student thing. It was more like a family thing.
We were still all no segregation of the abilities to learn. Everybody was still in the same courses together, regardless of whether you would classify them as low, medium, or high. Everybody went to school together. I thought that was good. I personally feel that puts kids who are slower learners in a position to have to raise their bar, and I think it pushes them. The gifteds, what they did in the classes when I was in high school, if you were ahead of the class that you were in, they'd set us over in a little separate group, give us independent work to work on, and the teacher would basically concentrate on what you would call the lows and the mediums, and those of us who had already understood what was going on were pushed even higher, but over in a little separate group in the same classroom ourselves. And then the teacher would check on us.
I was very proud of Central because it was a new school. It was new to me as well. And we had good teachers. So it was, Central High School meant a lot to me. It helped me along my way a lot.
You became a teacher. Do you remember when you started thinking about being a teacher?
Yes, I do. It was my junior year in high school, and I'll never forget it. We had one class, as I said earlier, that was located, you know, across the parking lot next to the VOAG building. And my government teacher had held us back, me and another student, to ask us something after class. And back during that time, teachers was very strict about being on time. And so we had to get from the upper end of the school all the way out to cross the parking lot to my United States history class. And I'll never forget, Mr. White taught that class. And when we came into the door, he said, "You're tardy and you receive a 0. Now, I had an A average. Back then, a 0 took an A to a D, and sometimes an F. And I looked at him and I said, "How can you give us a 0 when another teacher held us back?" And he said, "No, that's the policy and that's the way it is." And I never forget to this day, I looked in his face and I said, "I'm going to be a history teacher when I grow up, and I'm never going to give a student a 0. And I didn't.
I'm sure.
So that's when I chose United States history and economics as my goal in life, to be a teacher and to come back to Central and teach. I really wanted to take his job because, you know, I didn't think that was fair.
And when I say I liked everything, in high school, I was on the PE side. I played on the girls' basketball team, all right? I'm trying to think. I was a cheerleader. And foreign language, I took 2 years of French in 1 year. they had all kinds of clubs, math club, science club. I was in every last one of those. I took home ec 1 year. I took typing and shorthand. So not only was I taking the basics, the reading, the writing, the arithmetic, I was also taking all of, I'll call them extracurricular, because that's the only way I can describe them, even though they were a part of the courseware. I took all of those other courses too.
I was asked to direct the choir, which at that time he had the band director, but he didn't know much about singing or a choral group, and so he asked me if I love singing, and I wasn't qualified to teach it, you know, but we didn't have a period for it. I told him, well, we do it, and we got organized, and the kids, we would practice during lunchtime and any time we would have available in the day to learn the songs. But I was blessed to have musicians, kids who knew music and could play the music.
She was my choral director too. And Clara Jackson was the first person that gave me a solo. I remember I used to practice with the choir. We'd get to school early some mornings and we'd stay after school in the evening, but I'd sing Ain't Got Time to Die with the choir in the 8th grade, and that was Clara Jackson. And then Clara Jackson taught me This Land Is Mine, God Gave This Land to Me. And I sang that as a solo 1 year on the concert, and I remember she took me around to some local churches singing that. So she and I were close. She was close with my aunt. So I remember her with the choir, because we had a tremendous choir at Central.
And all those kids that was on the choir, the families was very supportive, you know. And we had a good choir. I guess I may have started out with maybe 25, and then I ended up having like 55 to 60. I was short of boys for the bass, and I went and got my buddies, Daniel Webster and Maurice Moore, and to sing bass. So I brought them on the choir, and we would take trips and we would load them up in our cars, and the parents, you know, we didn't have the buses.
We also had an auditorium at Central. The auditorium at Central was more theater style. In Madison Heights, it was just flat floor, regular fold-up chairs, and an elevated stage. At Central, it was a slanted floor like you'd have in a theater, and then a stage, and at least maybe it was every Thursday or once every Thursday out of the month, the school would have what we call talent days. And I used to love those. Anybody who wanted to, on talent day, we would do things like acting, we'd put on small skits, we would have singing competitions, jokes. I mean, just anything that a kid thought that they had as a talent, they had a way to air it, and they volunteered to do it. And the teachers would work with us when it came to skits and things like that, and helping us prepare the program. But the program was ours, which was fantastic.
We really enjoyed school then. I didn't have any problems, you know, with like being bullied or nothing like that. And I really enjoyed it. I remember at different times, at 2 o'clock, we would have dancing in the hall at special times. Oh my goodness. I don't remember what the occasion would be, but you would pay like a quarter, and the rest of the students that didn't play, I guess it was like a fund, something where to raise money. And we would have the dances in the hall for the last hour or something.
They had dances there during the day. I enjoyed that.
Dances during the day?
They had called social, not every day, it was a special time where every student would come and just go in there, socialize and dance. Not every day now. It was just on a special time.
We had a girls' basketball team, a boys' basketball team. There may have been others after I left, but while I was there was baseball. I think it was a baseball team. We played in, I don't know what district it was or region it was, but we played other schools from, I want to say, Buckingham, Charlotte Courthouse. I don't know where those schools would be classified from a district perspective, but we did have those kind of sports. I think at one point in time we had the bus to take us to basketball games and things like that, but we only had one bus, so that meant parents and teachers would bundle us into cars and take the rest of the players to go.
And did you only compete against black schools?
Yeah, that's all you competed against.
And that was true in theater also?
Yes. I came from a 100% segregated environment. There was no interaction. And I'll give you a little, for instance, of what was very interesting. Blacks come in all shapes and colors. And there was one guy in my school who had blonde hair and blue eyes, but he was black. Okay, I mean, because that's the way we look at things. And when we would travel on the road back during the day, if you wanted to stop to get something to eat, there were lots of places that we were not allowed to go. So this guy, and I won't mention his name, was the one that we give the order to go into the restaurant to get the food and bring it back, because he looked like he was white. He did not look like he was black. So that was how some of those things happened. But that was the name of the game back then.
I loved sports too. And I was a scorekeeper for the basketball team. So we used to travel with the team, take them in our cars, to play their games up in Lexington, up that way. And it was a joy to work with the kids, and when you support them in the things that they are interested in, like in sports or in music, they do well in the class. I was in charge of the cheerleaders too.
Can you tell us about the cheerleaders?
I mean, they were good.
I think I was. Yes, I was, because it had a green and white. We had green and white.
Do you remember any of the cheerleaders?
Oh, no. Here we were, little country girls. We didn't know a whole lot about cheer. We just had to, because we'd never been any place. We hadn't. If we'd gone to some of the, we probably hadn't gone into the college game. I know I hadn't. So you had to almost make up some or listen to some on TV. But same thing with doing an album art. We didn't have any of that, so we had to, get together and do brainstorming, and it was exciting that first year because the seniors, we had a whole lot to do.
I just loved sports and knew enough about the sport, and we would kids make up yells. I mean, they did that. I didn't have any.
I mean, did you have any of the moves? Or?
Well, they did that.
They did that.
They taught me to move.
Just needed a sponsor.
They just needed a sponsor. Like the kids wanted a chess club, and I didn't know nothing about chess, but you had to have a sponsor. So I signed up for the chess club so they could play chess.
We had a parent, the PTA was what it is now. Then it was, now it's PTO, I think. It's PTA then, Parents Teachers Association. And they got together and bought us some basketball uniforms.
When we wanted to be involved in extra things that involved leaving the school, the teachers were the ones, individual teachers are the ones who did those things for us. They were not sponsored per se by the school because I don't think they had the money to do it. So as an example, we had a drama club, and we won our district in drama and got to go to Virginia State, where the entire state of people who had won drama in their particular school came to compete. But that was because the teachers drove us to some of the meetings would be, I remember the basement of our house. The teachers would bring the students there, and we'd practice there and at other people's houses and things like that. So the dedication was there. I don't look at that as negative. It's negative in that it could not have been done as a part of the school, but it was positive in that the interest was still there and the motivation to make it happen and to expose us to things that maybe we would not have gotten exposed to without the assistance of those teachers.
In addition to all of the new extracurricular programs offered, Central High continued to recruit students for an old summer work program that had been in place at the Amherst Training School and Madison Heights Colony Road. With their parents' permission, students would go to Connecticut to work in the tobacco fields. The money they earned from their summer work often went towards their first cars, college, or back home to help their family.
Outside of Hartford, Connecticut, they grow cigar tobacco, and they needed labor. So I was like a migrant farmer to a certain extent, where you're going someplace to help them do what they did. So I did that for 3 years.
And what did you do in Connecticut?
I didn't pick tobacco. The boys picked tobacco, but the girls literally, what they did call sowed tobacco. The pay was, you could stand at a row. When you get there, the tobacco is no taller than this. So the girls' jobs was to tie the tobacco to a wire that ran down the row so that when it grew, it would not topple over. You wanted it to grow straight up. You could stand at one row and not see the end of it. This is how big the tobacco fields were. And we got paid 10 cents. They called it a bin, which is each row has a section in it of how many pieces of tobacco that can grow. And a section would probably be from that, my wall there to this wall here. And you can imagine how many tobacco plants grow within there. And we got 10 cents for that. I averaged $25 a day. I was there to work. It was interesting.
When I was in the backfield, I couldn't pick. Some of them boys could pick real fast. By me being large, I could drag. So we put the tobacco in a basket, twice long as that table. And then we drag it up to the end of the row.
So you went up in the summers?
Went up in the summer for 11 weeks.
How many summers did you do that?
I went up in 53 to 57.
And I went to Connecticut for 3 years. My junior year in high school, my senior year in high school, and my freshman year in college to have money to help pay for the expenses of my being in high school and going to college, because my family could not afford to send me without some supplementary support.
But that was a good thing for the blacks. The blacks, we have a reunion. We got one coming up during the summer. And all of that tobacco field in Hartford, Connecticut, and Bloomfield, Connecticut, there at the reunion, there were doctors, lawyers, school teachers, principals, nurses that worked in Hartford, Connecticut that started in 1941.
During those times, I think you did what you needed to do. It was really interesting. I had a conversation with my nephew, and I was telling him that when I was his age, that I had to go away to work in Connecticut. He said, couldn't you have worked at McDonald's? I said, there was no McDonald's. So just to let him know that things were very different then for black teenagers, there were no jobs. There was absolutely nothing for you to do if you wanted to earn extra income. So you went wherever it is you needed to go to do that.
And what did you get out of that experience?
I got out of that experience is learning to care for myself, washing my own clothes, and managing my own monies. Mm-hmm. I learned to be a manager, really.
There was one thing, you look forward to the prom. That was a senior prom only, you know. You didn't know, underclassmen could not go. I think the juniors could go only because they had helped decorate. But other than that, you couldn't invite anybody. That was an underclassman. It was strictly seniors, which was wonderful.
Did you have a theme or anything?
Yeah, don't ask me what I don't know. Had a theme and you had a curfew. 12 o'clock, you out of there.
Oh, yeah.
Do you all remember what you wore?
At that time, you had to wear evening. You had to wear one of these long gowns. Yeah, I think mine had like a lot of little ruffles down in there with a little slip on under.
Prom is a bad mark. Well, for my first one, that's a little nightmare because I didn't get to go. Okay. And the one that was supposed to come, he didn't come. Daddy, bless his heart, Dad had come home from work, and I had on that yellow prom gown. Oh, you should have seen our gowns. We went all out in the flirt. And Daddy was on go with me. I had a good day. He was on come. I said, no, I'm not going. I don't like to think of a prom.
Oh, so you didn't ever get to go?
Never got to go.
There weren't no all-night parties after the prom.
There weren't no all-night parties.
No way. These kids have to go to prom, they come in all night.
And looking for a limousine to take them.
Yeah. You didn't be careful, your parents are there waiting on you because that's the only ride you had.
And our parents were chaperones at the prom. There wasn't no strictness to it because you going to stay in that auditorium. And you going to stay in that gym where the prom was going on. You won't go nowhere. And won't no after prom party. You coming home.
Did you have a big procession or was there a graduation day?
Oh yeah, you did that and then somebody usually spoke or whatever, but you know, one no graduation party or nothing. You just went right on with the baccalaureate and commencement.
I was one of the ones up on the stage, you know. I was by the side of the road. My goodness, I still remember that title so well. I had memory then. I could remember things.
What did you speak for? Were you like top of your class or were you voted in or something?
Yeah, I was on one of the, you know, I don't remember what number, but that was one of the reasons I was up there.
Were you a member of the Honor Society?
Yes.
I received some awards. Good citizenship. I can't think of it. I have them downstairs. I got about 5 or 6 of them. My dad was what you may say, he may not have been an educated man, but he was a wise man. And he had a lot of wise saying.
Can you remember a favorite saying?
His favorite saying, he said, son, manners and behavior will get you a lot of time place where education won't. He said, you may not have a lot of education, but if you got manners and behavior, people will give you a break. And I found out that to be true.
And I think if my mom and dad had been, you know, really strict on getting the education, I probably would never quit school. Most time when kids got like 15 years old, they had to get out of school and go to work. And I started work when I was like 13. And during the summer when we was out of school, I went across the mountain to the university and stayed in the house with some people and babysitted 3 kids. My parents, like I said, didn't graduate from a high school or elementary school. And their concept of education did not necessarily include college because that was not a part of their thought process. But they felt that if we got a good education, that would put us in a position to get good jobs. When I was a senior in high school, that I had not thought about college either. And Mrs. Mitchell, who was our guidance director, came to me one day and told me I would be going to college because I was basically a straight A student.
Well, I have to say that it was Ms. Mitchell because it was just something special about her. She really loved her students. When I was in high school, she was right there. She was a guidance teacher then, and she was the one that wanted me to go to college so bad. She had gotten all the paperwork. All I had to do was go. But I was timid, not like my children, that timid. I just couldn't imagine leaving home, going away to school. Had been accepted. My grandfather was going to pay the extra. And I don't know why, but it just terrified me, the thoughts of leaving home. I couldn't go.
I had not thought about college, so here I am in my senior year, and I've only got 1 year of a foreign language, and you have to have 2 to go to a college. So Mrs. Jordan, who was the French instructor, this is how they handled it. They put me in 2nd year French, and Mrs. Jordan tutored me in 1st year French. I could write it, read it, and could not speak it.
I learned a lot. And when the year that I quit, the school teacher tried to get me to come back. But I didn't want to. And I figured what I'm going to do in life. And what I said I was going to do is what I done. I done what I said I was going to do.
I think I had an outstanding education. Coming from a small rural school in Amherst County, and then going on to Virginia State University to further my education, I never felt behind, because when you got to your campus, here was people coming from all over the United States, and here you were, you know, this little country girl from Amherst County. But our teachers used to stay after school to help us and give us other classes so that we wouldn't be behind anybody when we got to college, if that was our chosen path, because all of the classes that you needed to go to college were not taught during the day. So teachers like Miss Jackson, Mr. Moore, Mr. Davis would stay after school to give us more education, and then they would bring us home in their cars after school was over.
Of all of my teachers, probably Mr. Moore had the most impact on my life, because once he decided that I was going to college, or that Miss Mitchell decided I was going to college, Mr. Moore was the catalyst to ensure that that happened. He's the one who recommended state for me to go, because that's where he went. He's the one who contacted the people down there in the work-study programs. We had no money, so that was a way for us to offset the cost of going to school. There were no such thing as scholarships. Interestingly enough, Sweetbriar gave me money to go to state. And then I had to borrow the rest of the money, and my mom and dad signed up for loans for me to be able to go. And Mr. Moore was always there for me.
At that time, at Sweetbriar, they gave us a little scholarship. It wasn't a whole lot, but that was part of the encouragement. That, you know, you got a little, it was a scholarship at that time, you know, it's big money at that time.
$50. But when you think about it, that was unusual, because Sweetbriar at that time, if you lived in the county, you could go to Sweetbriar for free. Right. But because I was black, I could not go to Sweetbriar.
Most of our parents worked at Sweetbriar.
Yes, they did.
They worked at Sweetbriar, some capacity or other.
And did you go to college?
Yes.
Where did you go to college?
I went to seminary for 2 years. That's in Lynchburg, and then from there I went to Virginia Union, and then I went to Temple University.
In Pennsylvania?
In Pennsylvania. But see, at that time we went to a predominantly black school, because you didn't have any other choice, you know.